This special relationship is classified into two: obligations and rights. Banker obligation to honor the customer check. So honoring the customer check is the obligation for banker. Banker cannot honor your check. They cannot accept your request and he cannot repay your money because it is a fixed deposit for the fixed period. You cannot withdraw that particular money. Any information related to customer account about the transaction, you should not disclose the information to the outsider. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to one and all to the second session on Unit 4, Law and Practice of Banking. In the last session, we have discussed about the relationship between banker and customer. In today's session, let us continue with the relationship between the banker and customer. I am Meghana from the Department of Commerce, lecturing in Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence. So let us start with the second session. In today's session, let us continue with the second part, that is the relationship between banker and customer. In the last session, we finished with the general relationship. So next one is a special relationship. Let us discuss special relationship in today's session. So what do you mean by special relationship? Special relationship between a banker and customer refers to a special obligation and rights of the banker against the customer and vice versa. So here banker obligation and rights against the customer. Again it's vice versa. Customer obligation and rights against the banker. So both the party have some obligations and rights. They need to follow that obligations and rights. So the rights and obligations are reciprocal, that is customer rights are banker duties and banker's rights are customer duties. So it is a vice versa, it's a reciprocal. So customer rights is a banker obligation, banker rights is a customer obligation. So the various special features of this relationship between banker and customers are obligations and rights. So this special relationship is classified into two: obligations and rights. So under that, first one is the obligation. So banker obligations to honor is customer's check. So banker obligation to honor the customer check. So honoring the customer check is the obligation for banker. So what all are the condition or what all are the things which comes under the obligations to honors the check? When the current account is opened by a banker in the name of customer, there is an obligation on a banker to honor the customer check. When the customer opens a bank account, now the banker has the responsibility or obligation to honor the customer's check. So the customer's check, as long as there are sufficient fund available in the customer's account for meeting the check. So for this condition, as long as possible, the customer account has a sufficient fund in order to meet the check, so that the banker obligation to honor the customer check. The debts are repayable by the banker to the customer on demand as per the contract entered into between them. So the debts repayable. Debts repayable means banker is a general debtor for the customer money. So banker has the obligation to repay the customer money on the demand. So based on the contract between the banker and customer, you need to repay the money on the demand. So whenever the customer demands the repayment of his deposits by issuing checks, there is a contractual obligation on the banker to honor his customer's check and repay his deposit. So whenever the customer demands for the repayment through check, so banker has the obligation to honor the check and to repay the customer deposit. So in what all are the circumstances banker has to honor the customer check? Banker obligation to honor the check is subject to certain condition. So what all are those conditions? Sufficient fund must be available. In order to honor the check, customer account, you should have a sufficient balance so that the banker can honor your check and he can repay your money. Next one, fund must be properly applicable to the payment of check. For example, customer XYZ, he has two accounts, saving bank account, then FD account. So FD account, he has a balance of 2 lakh rupees. FD account, he has a balance of 2 lakh rupee. In saving account, he has only 20,000. So total altogether, he has 2,20,000 rupees XYZ has 2,20,000 rupees with the bank A. So now he can repay his money whenever he requires. So now this XYZ, he demand for the repayment through check. So he submitted 2 lakh rupees check. So now this check will go for this SB account. So in SB account, in saving bank account, he has only 20,000. He don't have sufficient money. But he has 2,20,000 rupees with the bank A. But you cannot utilize this 2 lakh rupees for the SB account. So it is not applicable in order to meet your check, in order to accept your check. So in order to accept the check, the applicable money or applicable fund is only 20,000 rupees. So in this situation, banker can dishonor or banker cannot honor your check. They cannot accept your request and he cannot repay your money because it is a fixed deposit for the fixed period. You cannot withdraw that particular money. You cannot utilize that money for a fixed period. So that the money, sufficient money is not available in your account. So applicable money should be with your account in order to repay the check or in order to repay the money. Next one, banker must be duly required to pay the check. So you need to fill the check properly. Name, date, amount in rupees, then signature. All the detailed information should be properly filled in order to repay the money. So without the proper information, banker cannot accept your check for the repayment. Then there must be no legal bar presenting the payment of check. There must be no legal bar in order to accept your deposits. So in all these circumstances, bank can repay your money. Bank can accept your check and they can repay your money. So sufficient balance and sufficient balance applicable to accept your check. Then no legal bar. Then all duly filled check should be presented for repayment. So in all the circumstances, banker can repay your money or banker can accept your check and repay your money. So in what all are the circumstances, banker can dishonor your check. Banker is obliged to honor his customer's check. He can dishonor the check issued by the customer under certain circumstances. What all are those conditions or circumstances? Such as insufficient balance, insufficiency of fund in customer's account, then irregularity in check. So there is no proper information in the check. So he can dishonor the check. Then post-dated check before its due date. Post-dated check before its due date. Before the due date, you are presenting the check. For example, so today's date is 22/8/2022. The date on the check is mentioned is 25/8/22. So the due date for your check is 25. So now you are presenting the check on 22. So it is post-dated check presenting before due date. Due date is 25th, but you are presenting on 22/8/2022. So in that situation, banker can dishonor the customer check. Then attachment of funds in the customer accounts by garnishee orders. So in all these circumstances, banker can dishonor the customer check. So banker can honor the check in certain circumstances. So those circumstances are this. So in certain situation, banker can dishonor the check. So all this condition or circumstances are insufficiency in bank account, then proper information, then presenting post-dated check before due date and through the garnishee order. So all this comes under the dishonor. So next one is wrongful dishonor. That means the mistakes from banker side. So banker has a sufficient balance to repay. Then duly filled check is presented for the repayment. No garnishee order, no legal bar, no legal restriction. So all these things are proper. But banker fails to repay the money due to insufficient balance with the bank. You cannot give that reason in order to dishonor the customer check. So in that situation, banker has to face certain situation. Banker has to pay penalty for that dishonor, wrongful dishonor. So banker can dishonor a customer check under certain circumstances. Wrongful or unjustified dishonor of the customer check lands the banker in a trouble. He needs to face problem. If banker without any justifiable reason dishonor his customer's check, he become liable to compensate the customer for any damages. Now banker is liable to repay or compensate for that losses or damages. So the customer can claim the damage from the bank for wrongful dishonor of his check on ground of breach of contract by the bank. So it's a breach of contract. You are breaking the contract rules, agreement rule, so that customer can demand or customer can ask for the compensation from banker side. So it's a wrongful dishonor of check, so that banker has to compensate the losses or damage faced by the customer. So this is all about wrongful dishonor of check from the banker side. Moving further, next obligation is to banker obligation to maintain the secrecy of customer's account. So first obligation is to banker obligation to honor the customer check. Next one, obligation to maintain the secrecy of customer's account. So banker has to maintain the secrecy about the customer account. You cannot give information for anybody without informing customer. So the banker should not disclose to any outsider the details concerning the customer's account, such as the amount deposited, check issued, the overdraft, loan or any advances guaranteed, then the securities deposited by the customer against the advance, etc. Any information related to customer account about the transaction, you should not disclose the information to the outsider. So that is banker obligation to maintain the secrecy. So exception to the banker obligation to observe the secrecy. So what all are the exceptional cases in order to observe the customer account information or customer information? So when there is an express consent of the customer, that means if the customer agrees in order to give information for the others through verbal or through written instruction. He has given the instruction in order to give information for the other individual or outsiders, then banker can give information for the outsider. So when there is an implied consent of the customer, when the customer accepts in order to give information for the outsider, then the banker can give information for the outsider. When he is compelled by the law of the court. So when he compelled by the law of court, banker needs to give information about that particular customer. So next, when his own interest requires disclose. So through the customer own interest, he disclosed the information about the customer account, then it is exceptional case. Next, when he is under the public duty to disclose. When he is under the public duty to disclose, banker can disclose the customer information. So all these are the exceptional cases for the obligation to maintain the customer secrecy. So in all these circumstances, banker can observe the customer account information. Moving further, next one is rights. We finished with obligation. Next one is rights. So what all are the rights of a banker? So first one is a rights of general lien, rights of set off or banker rights to combine the account, banker rights to charge compound interest, banker rights to charge incidental charges. So under that first one is right of general lien. Right of general lien means it's a right of one person in order to retain or in order to hold a property until the debt is recovered from the owner of that property. For example, in this situation, in this case, banker and customer relationship, customer pledged some documents in order to get loan from the bank. So now the documents is with the banker. That means the land property document is with the banker. Banker has the right to hold that property, to retain that property until the debt recovered from the customer. So that is the rights of customer. That is right of general lien. Rights of one person to hold the property until the debt recovered from the customer. So he has the rights to hold or retain that property until the debt recovered. That is right of general lien. Next one is right to set off. That means customer has two separate account, two saving bank account in one particular bank. So in order to recover the money, in order to recover banker's money, banker can combine two account. Banker can combine two account or set off two account in order to recover the particular money. So that is right to set off or right to combine two accounts. Next one is banker rights to charge compound interest. Compound interest. If customer fails to pay interest, principal and interest regularly, banker has the rights to charge compound interest on that principal and interest. So that is right to charge compound interest. Next one, banker rights to charge incidental charges. So the various services provided by the banker, for all the services, they can charge incidental charges like ATM services, SMS services and various other services provided by the banker. Banker can charge, banker has the rights to charge the incidental charges for the special services provided by the banker to its customer. So these all are the rights of banker. So banker rights and banker obligation. So this is all about special relationship. So this is all about the unit 4, banker and customer, relationship between banker and customer. So let us meet in the next session with the unit 5. Until then, keep watching. Thank you.